Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. This is the post-game podcast. The Timberwolves lost the Wizards on Sunday by 15, but Karl-Anthony Towns' injury is the most important news of the day. We'll talk about the latest on the Towns injury, how long might he be out, plus what went wrong for yet another loss, the Wolves' third consecutive. We'll break it all down here on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Tuesday, everybody. This is unfortunately not a Victory Tuesday, and adding insult to injury, or actually adding injury to another insulting loss, really, if I'm being honest. The Timberwolves wake up on Tuesday with a 3-game losing streak, another double-digit loss, and Karl-Anthony Towns injured. We'll talk about the latest on Towns and what went wrong in this game here in just a minute. First, though, a big thank you to those of you that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. It's absolutely greatly appreciated. Of course, you can find the show free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch the show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. That's a brand new Roku app and Amazon Fire TV app. This show, as well as all the other fantastic Locked On Minnesota shows, the Golden Gophers, the Twins, the Vikings, the Wild, you name it, you can find it on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Roku and Amazon Fire TV apps. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. All right. Let's start with the Towns thing, because the takeaways are exhausting. Like, I'm just going to be honest. It's very similar to what we've seen recently, except for kind of like on a macro level in this one. So let's start with Towns, because that's the headliner. I don't want to bury the lead here. Karl-Anthony Towns, if you missed the game, went down in the second half with a non-contact leg injury. And the above the basket cam on the opposite end of the floor kind of caught Towns going back the other way to go to play defense. And he planted his right foot and stepped, and immediately went down and grabbed his calf. And the speculation immediately, if you watch sports before, you've seen it a lot of times. It's a severe something like that. It's a similar mechanism to what's often an Achilles injury, and that's what went through my mind immediately. Towns had to be helped off the floor, didn't put any weight on his leg. And the Wolves are, as of this recording, they have not released the MRI results yet. Recording this late Sunday, following, some of the locker room news and the post-game interviews and everything that came out. So as of now, the Wolves are still going to do an MRI on Monday, but there's optimism around the team, according to multiple reports, that it is simply a calf strain. The Wolves, or I shouldn't say simply, we don't know the severity yet. The Wolves announced during the game he was out with the calf strain, the Timberwolves did. And then after the game, the first reports that came out that suggested that is, all it is. And I say that because obviously an Achilles would be something that would affect, he'd miss the next year and impact the next couple of years, if not his whole career. So relatively speaking, because a calf injury can still be relatively severe as well. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But Shams Charania of the Athletic and Stadium and Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN both reported the Wolves are optimistic that it's a calf strain, that Towns avoided something much more serious. And then John Krasinski, locally, of course, of the Athletic, a little bit later put out after the post-game interviews, after he did the media and all that, the media scrum and all that stuff, or the post-game interviews, Krasinski said, from what I can gather, everyone is breathing a big sigh of relief with Karl-Anthony Towns' injury. Still more evaluation tomorrow, meaning Monday, but it is still looking like it could have been so much worse. So all positive reports as of this recording. Now, calf strains can range anywhere from, Jordan McLaughlin's missed 4 of the last 5 games with the calf issue, something like that. So it could be, a week to 2 weeks. It could be a month if it's a severe calf strain. Basically, any strain like that is some form of a tear, no matter how minor it might be. He's surely going to miss the next, the Wolves play Wednesday, they play Saturday, and then they don't play again until next Wednesday. But he's surely going to miss a couple games. 2, probably at least 3 games. That takes him about 8 days, 9 days from now. So perhaps somewhat thankfully, there's only 3 games in the next 8 days. It's a weird, they've got a game in 2 days and they have 2 days off. They play, then they have 3 days off before they play again. So if it is a relatively minor strain, he may only miss 2, 3, 4 games, something like that. And of course, purely speculating based on, the history of calf strains in general. And also Towns is a pretty durable player and has played through quite a bit. Remember all the surgeries he underwent, minor surgeries he underwent after the season last year to try and clean some things up. So, it's way too early to tell. Based on what my immediate reaction was to the replay, it feels like it could have been a lot worse. And all things considered, this could end up being a positive outcome. There's also additional potential silver linings. Like if we're trying to, like, what's the best that can come of this? Could the Wolves find a rhythm without Towns on the floor, and Ant could be even more aggressive, and D'Lo can get more shots, and Rudy can be more involved in the flow, and the Wolves can play, weirdly enough, maybe a little bit more like the Jazz did with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Obviously, Ant and Mitchell are different players, as are D'Lo and Mitchell. But could the Wolves just simplify things a little bit? Now, obviously, you'd rather have Karl-Anthony Towns shooting the ball more than you would, say, D'Angelo Russell or Rudy Gobert. Towns is a better offensive player than those guys. But who knows? I mean, you certainly don't want an injury. The Wolves are absolutely a worse team without Karl-Anthony Towns. But could this be an opportunity for other guys to find a role? Maybe. I think the flip side of that, and this is honestly, again, like transparently, what I would be more worried about is that now we're kicking the can for more minutes with this group together. We're already 21 games into the season. We're already a quarter of the way, just a little over a quarter of the way through the season. And opportunities for these guys to play together are, Jaden McDaniels has missed the last couple of games. So there's, for the preferred starting five, which started the year so terribly, has played better of late in general. Obviously, they're on a 3-game skid, 2 of the losses without Jaden McDaniels. That 5-man group of D'Lo, Ant, Jaden McDaniels, Towns, and Rudy Gobert has begun to play better together. Now, no McDaniels. Now you have Towns out for who knows how long. And who knows? Like, say he doesn't come back for a couple of weeks. We'll take the average of what it seems like the range of outcomes could be, 1 to 4 weeks, something like that. So call it 2 weeks. Say he misses 5, 6, 7 games. Now you're talking the season's a third of the way over, and the starting lineup's only played a few hundred minutes together. And we're burning daylight, right? I mean, like this lineup needs to play together for them to gel, for the Wolves to get better, to win games. And then ultimately, if they do get to the playoffs, which, a few weeks ago, I would have laughed at the idea that this was an if, right? And coming into play today, I think the Wolves were 10th in the West. So like still at least in the play-in mix. But for this team to get to the playoffs and then to succeed in the playoffs, obviously the starting lineup needs reps together. And the extreme downside to this is if Towns misses an extended period of time, not only is he not on the floor, but that's more time without the starting five together. And we'll see if it means Kyle Anderson starts. We'll see if I would be surprised if Naz Reid started. Nate Knight's always a possibility if they want to leave Kyle Anderson with the bench unit. But if McDaniels is out Wednesday too, you could see Rivers and McDaniels starting. Rivers and Anderson starting. You could maybe see Anderson at the 3 and Knight at the 4. I think that's unlikely. We'll probably see some Luka Garza get called up. Like, we're going to see a lot of shuffling here in the next few days. Now, McDaniels and McLaughlin could be back at any point in time. Taurean Prince is probably out at least another week with the shoulder issue, because Prince is another player that would see more minutes. He's played some at the 4 the last couple of years for the Wolves, and with no Towns, you could maybe see Prince starting, and Prince and Anderson starting. Prince at the 3, Anderson at the 4, and you keep Rivers and those guys coming off the bench. But with no Prince, now you very likely are going to see Anderson starting, and maybe still Austin Rivers in the lineup. There's never a good time for something like this to happen, obviously, but man, with the Wolves now sitting at 10 and 11 and just losing 3 games in really disappointing fashion to a bad Charlotte team on Friday, in non-competitive fashion for the most part to the Warriors and Wizards back-to-back games Sunday, Monday. This is a rough time to now have Towns go down for an undetermined amount of time. But we'll see how Finch and the Wolves are able to weather the storm. Next, I do want to do a couple of other takeaways from the game, what stuck out to me in Wolves Wizards, and then we'll close with individual studs and duds, as we always do. First, though, today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., the UK, Canada, and Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and simply need to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. A big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen today. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, additional takeaways from Wolves Wizards. I said this on the postcast with Marnie Gellner. We do the live postcast, of course, about 45 minutes to an hour after every single game. If you're listening right now on an audio feed, it's the episode before this was the live postcast with Marnie from Valley Sports North. Otherwise, you can watch it live on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. But Marnie and I talked about this another night, another lackadaisical start to the game for the Wolves. It was previously the third quarter coming out of halftime that the Wolves were so miserable. They'd been one of the league's best first quarter teams up until the last few games. And now we saw this against the Warriors on Sunday, which you could maybe chalk up to a matinee, a 2:30 p.m. local start. We saw it a little bit against Charlotte last week. No, I guess Charlotte, they started a little bit better at the beginning of the game. But another night, another lackadaisical start to the game for the Wolves. They fell behind 23-8 to start the game, down 15 just a few minutes into the game. They ultimately gave up 77 points in the first half, which is just insane to a team that, by the way, let's talk about it now. The Wizards are 23rd in offensive rating coming into this game, according to Basketball Reference. I believe other sites actually had them lower than that. They were 23rd in pace. They were shooting under 34% from three-point range coming into this game, which was bottom like 7 or 8 in the league. And the Wolves gave up 77 first half points. We could slice and dice this however you want. 38 in the first quarter. The Wizards scored 39 in the second, 77 at halftime. The Wolves gave up 32 or more points in all four quarters of this game, 142 points in a regulation 48-minute NBA game. No overtime needed for the Washington Wizards, the league's 23rd best offense, to hang a 142 on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Not good defense. Not a good start to the game. 77 first half points by the Washington Wizards. The Wizards came into this game shooting 33.8% from three, like I mentioned. What did they shoot in this game? 48.4% from three. They outshot themselves, their season three-point shooting percentage, by 15 points. Kristaps Porzingis was obviously a big part of that. Shot 6 of 10 from three, had 29 in the first half, 41 for the game. Bradley Beal actually was not like a primary culprit for this. He had a really good game, but he only made 1 3-pointer, 1 for 4 from three. 4 for 7 for Kyle Kuzma. He came on strong in the second half. I guess, I don't know, Corey Kispert was 2 for 2. He had a good game. Will Barton made his only 3-point attempt, but 48% from three for the Wizards in this game. And again, they came out of the gate like they were shot out of a cannon against the Wolves. And the book on the Wolves now is run on them. Make their bigs run the floor. Make Towns and Gobert get back defensively. Put Jaden McDaniels, who obviously didn't play in this game, but is prone to foul trouble, get him into foul trouble because he's a good defender and important to what the Wolves do, as we've seen with the, whatever the Wolves, what they give up to the Warriors, 137 to Golden State. So with the 279 points they've given up in the last 2 regulation games with no overtime, without Jaden McDaniels on the floor, that's another conversation. We'll probably talk about that on Wednesday's show. All that to say, the Wizards said, we can run on this team. Make Gobert run, make Towns run, take advantage of no McDaniels. The Wolves are having to play Ant at the 3 now with Rivers in the starting lineup, and they made that adjustment after halftime, by the way, where Kyle Anderson came out and slid Edwards back to the 2. Rivers did not start the second half after starting the game for the Wolves. But the Wizards were 23rd in pace coming into the game. I said they were 23rd in offensive rating. They were also 23rd in pace. They don't generally like to play super fast. But that's how you have to beat the Wolves, because any half-court defense anchored by Rudy Gobert is a competitive half-court defense. And the Wolves, that's how I think I would classify it. I don't know that I would even say, the Wolves came into Sunday's game against the Warriors, actually, 9th in defensive rating. So you could say the Wolves had a good team defense. I would say they have a competitive half-court defense. Any team with Rudy Gobert anchoring their defense will be a competitive defensive team. So teams say, well, let's just run on them. Let's make them move their feet. Let's make them get back defensively. Let's make Towns and Gobert, who are crashing the glass on offense, get all the way back, run the entire length of the floor, run 84 feet to try and get back, and slow down a fast break. Let's make Ant run, because he's shown us that he doesn't always want to try defensively. It is what it is. Make Jaylen Nowell defend. Make the sixth man who only wants to score defend. By playing fast, running after makes, running after misses, running on any opportunity you can. A team that was 23rd in pace did just that against the Wolves, and that led them to 77 first half points and 142 on the night. It was another transition defense debacle for the Timberwolves. Bright spots. We'll talk a little bit more about Jaylen Nowell and Anthony Edwards and studs and duds. I thought they were both really good offensively. For Nowell, especially in the first half, Edwards, especially in the third quarter, a little bit of a tale of two halves again for Edwards. And defensively, neither one of them was particularly good, except for a small stretch when Edwards was like really locked in. But again, that points back to the issue we talked about after Sunday's game. Edwards, he's got to stay locked in for more than a few minutes. When the Wolves get down double figures, he says, all right, I'm going to take over now. That's nice. I mean, the Wolves haven't won these games when Ant has done that, but maybe try harder, play better earlier in the game, and it won't be something that needs to happen necessarily. I guess that brings me to my next point, which is perimeter defense in general. And Ant is far from the only culprit. I think Jaylen Nowell is a primary culprit. D'Lo had some really bad possessions in this game. And we talked after, I think it was the Charlotte game, D'Lo was so competitive on the perimeter defensively. He's had these games recently where he has competed. He did not compete defensively in this game. D'Angelo Russell did not. And he, again, not the only one. Austin Rivers had bad moments. He's supposed to be a good perimeter defender. Anthony Edwards had a lot of bad moments defensively. Jaylen Nowell had a lot of bad moments defensively. Those are the primary guys who were on the perimeter, and they had big problems in this game, defending both on the ball, and Marnie keyed in on this on the live postcast after the game. The on-ball defense was I'm going to use the term lackadaisical again. It was just kind of like not even fully in a stance, whatever. The off-ball defense was something that stuck out to me. It was terrible against the Warriors Sunday, which, far superior offense with much greater talent in really every way than the Wizards. And the Wolves played the same way against the Wizards, and the Wizards made shots in this game. Again, a Washington team shooting 33% from three on the year, shot 48% from three in this game because the Wolves continually gave them wide open looks. The last takeaway I have is the Timberwolves' three-point shooting percentage was awful in this game. More of the same. And I'm still prepared. I'll tell you on Wednesday on the show, I'm going to talk about how reasons for optimism for the Wolves. Part of that is three-point shooting. Like, this team has too many good shooters. The law of averages would suggest that at some point the Wolves will progress to these guys will each progress to their career means in terms of three-point shooting. D'Angelo Russell was 1 of 7 from three in this game. Ant was 1 of 6. Like, that's not going to last. You're not going to have D'Lo and Ant combined to shoot 2 of 13 from three, and throw in Towns, who's 0 of 1 before the injury, combined to shoot 2 of 14, those three guys together. Like, that's not going to happen with frequency. It has, though, to this point in the season. And we're a quarter of the way in. Like I said earlier, it's still happening. But in my mind, it's a reason for optimism because, like I said, it can't happen for 82 games. It just can't. There's a reason these guys have a track record of success, especially in the case of D'Lo and Towns when it comes to shooting threes. And you could throw Jaylen Nowell in there. You could throw Bryn Forbes in there. Like, these guys will all shoot the ball better at some point, right? It just hasn't happened yet. It's absolutely confounding that hasn't happened yet. Okay. Next, what I want to do is individual studs and duds. As we always do, we'll peek ahead at the schedule here the rest of the week, and I'll talk a little bit about what I'd like to cover the rest of the week here on the show. First, though, this episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's extremely easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. Like you literally just you post the job, and then you add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. It's that simple. Simple tools like screening questions also can make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus the competitors. It's important to finish the year strong. We're just a month away now from the end of the calendar year. Finding the right team member with LinkedIn Jobs can help you do just that. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's talk individual studs and duds from Wolves Wizards. And like honestly, I don't really want to pick any studs from this game because the Wolves were so bad defensively, and I think everybody was culpable. Like it's impossible to just say so and so was the reason why the Wolves were terrible defensively. I mean, they gave up 142 points, so everyone that was on the floor was absolutely culpable in this defensive disaster for the Wolves. So I want to preface this by saying, like, these guys were not great defensively, but they were really good on offense, and not everyone was for the Wolves. So let's start here. I want to talk Anthony Edwards. Like, he was really good in the third quarter. I know he was bad defensively. I know he had 7 turnovers. He was the guy who had the chance to get the Wolves back in it, and he did. 29 points on 19 shots. He was only 1 of 6 outside the arc, but he was really good going to the basket. I mean, that means he was 8 of 13 from 2-point range. He was 10 of 11 at the line. He finally got a favorable whistle and was aggressive going to the basket. I thought his shot selection was generally really good in this game. The turnovers were because he was a little overzealous trying to make things happen. I don't think he was like ultra sloppy with the ball. I would have liked him to play harder earlier in the game. Could have said that Sunday. Could have said that any number of times over the first 21 games of the season. It's not great. It's something he's got to work on. But if we're talking who were the Wolves' 3 best players on the floor in this game, you have to talk about Anthony Edwards. 29 points, 8 rebounds, which was nice, 2 assists, 2 steals, 9 of 19 shooting. He did make 10 free throws on 11 attempts, 7 turnovers, though, for Ant. Also, Rudy Gobert. Rudy's had his issues. He was not good Sunday. He was not good in Charlotte. He had 19 and 7 in this game, a perfect 7 of 7 from the floor, 5 of 5 at the line. Anytime you get a 100% free throw shooting night from Rudy Gobert, he's likely going to be on the stud list. He was pretty good defensively. He did get credited with 1 block. I thought maybe he would have more than that. But he didn't really drop any passes that I can remember in this game. He caught a couple real tough deliveries from Russell. He had a couple of alley-oop dunks, caught a couple of lobs. The ball just seemed to stick to his hands better in this game. And again, 100% from the floor, 7 of 7, 100% for the line, 5 of 5, 19 and 7. I thought Rudy played well in this game. And obviously they're going to need a lot more from Rudy offensively too if Karl-Anthony Towns misses any length of time, which I think is pretty likely. Also, Jaylen Nowell, again, with the caveat, the defense was not great. 23 points on 13 shots. That, my friends, is efficiency that we have not seen from Jaylen Nowell in a little while, really 2-3 weeks. There was like 1 good game last week, but I mean, Marty and I talked about it on the postcast. He was really good the first couple weeks of the season. The efficiency, though, disappeared. And thankfully, it came back in this game, especially, well, he played well in the first half of the Warriors game, too. We saw a little bit more of that here. 23 points on 13 shots, 2 of 3 on threes, 3 of 4 at the line, 5 rebounds, which is a good number for Jaylen Nowell in 25 minutes. Played 2 assists and a steal, only 1 turnover for Nowell. And in a game the Wolves lost by 15 and trailed by as many as 28, Jaylen Nowell was a -5 in 25 minutes, which was the best mark of any Timberwolf besides Bryn Forbes that played beyond garbage time in this game. So not a bad game from Jaylen Nowell. He is the 3rd stud. So we're going Ant, we're going Rudy, and we're going Jaylen Nowell. Duds for this game. I'm going to give one to, this is a little bit tougher because, again, like I could make the argument for almost anybody on the floor for the Wolves. I'm going to give it to Austin Rivers because I thought he played poorly again. We saw that in his start against the Warriors on Sunday. We saw it in some spot minutes against Charlotte. I don't think he was effective defensively, and he gives you nothing offensively. He was, 0 of 3 outside the arc, 4 points on 2 of 5 shooting total. So he made his 2 2-point shots. He did have one nice dribble drive in the second half when it was a little bit too little too late. 0 of 3 outside the arc, though, and some good looks. Just 1 rebound in 24 minutes, 2 assists, committed 4 fouls, struggled defensively, I thought. D'Angelo Russell, disappointed. He had, I think, 13 of his 17 points were in the first quarter. Came out guns blazing and then finished 1 of 7 outside the arc. 5 assists, 3 turnovers in this game for D'Lo. So kind of an up and down game for him. Not a dud. I'm just going to give that to Rivers, but D'Lo disappointed a little bit in this one as well. Okay. Not much else to say about this one. 3 straight losses, all demoralizing in somewhat different ways. The Towns injury obviously making this one feel even worse. The Wolves schedule, though, Memphis at home on Wednesday. They at least get to come home for 3 straight. They play the Grizzlies Wednesday night. That's going to be extremely tough. Memphis is playing much better than they were the last time the Wolves saw them. And obviously they still lost to Memphis by 11 on the road almost 3 weeks ago. And then they get Oklahoma City at home on Saturday. So they get Thursday, Friday off, Oklahoma City at home, and then off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday before playing host to the Pacers next Wednesday, the 7th. So 3 consecutive home games. They get to stay home until next Friday against Utah. So their next road game isn't for another, 11 days, 10 or 11 days from now. So yeah, Memphis is, especially with no Towns, a likely loss. Like if we're being honest about this, they're going to be 10-12, 2 winnable home games, even without Towns against Oklahoma City and Indiana. They could go on the road for the West Coast swing. They could go on the road at a 500 record. And that would be important with Utah, 2 games in Portland, the Clippers, and Oklahoma City, all away games upcoming after that. So all that to say, on Wednesday's show, I do want to break down, generally what has gone wrong the most over the last few games. I want to focus in on a couple of reasons for optimism. One being shooting, and I'll get into the numbers a bit more. That will be Wednesday. And then we'll peek ahead at the upcoming schedule and which matchups could be most favorable for the Wolves. We'll do all that on Wednesday's show. A big thank you again for those of you that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Of course, the show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on Locked On Sports Minnesota. That's the Roku and Amazon Fire TV app. Again, Locked On Sports Minnesota on Roku or Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. A reminder that we go live with Marnie Gellner on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel, the postcast, 45 minutes after each game. And then that's also posted on all the Locked On Wolves audio feeds as well. Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. A reminder that for your second listen, you can go check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.